This is Garis, Masculist, MGTOW, flyers. That is 2 3-page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 244, entitled Masculisting the Women. Description. This flyer lists how masculists need to change women so that women don't oppress men. There's quite a list. Flyer itself. Masculisting the Women by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Prof. Hugo de Garis at yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. This flyer is another in a series with the title Masculisting the ... This one concerns ideas on how the masculists can influence women so that women don't oppress men and can help men make life pleasanter. If you're a feminist and you know nothing about masculism or MGTOW, then your first reaction is probably, what do men have to be liberated from? Feminism teaches women that men are the privileged sex who have the power and who oppress women. So to a lot of feminists, hearing the masculists talk about a genocracy rather than a patriarchy just sounds incongruous, generating cognitive dissonance. But women do oppress men, making their lives a misery, which is partly what this flyer is about. This flyer is concerned with ideas on what masculists and MGTOWs need to do to liberate themselves from the oppression of women. To set the scene, I will place here in bulleted form the main tasks that masculists have to perform to liberate themselves from women's oppressiveness. Bullet. Women have to be taught, to be socialized, to be FIPs, financially independent persons. Bullet. Women need to become female masculists, to vote with men, to men-fair the gender laws. Bullet. The feminazis need to be smashed so that they shut up. Bullet. Women need to get real on their inferiorities and delusional arrogance. Bullet. Women need to learn to be nice again to men or be ignored by men. Bullet. Women will have to compete with the art wombs and sex bots. Bullet. Women need to grow up, toughen up. Now, the elaboration of the above bulleted points. First one. Women have to be taught to be socialized to be FIPs, that's financially independent persons. The primary political goal of the masculists is to free men from manslavery. That is, working for women, being manslaves for women, and to do this worldwide, this century. We masculists do this by wiping out the fluffies, that is, traditional women who expect to be able to parasite off a man, bribing him with sex so that he pays for her, works for her, is a slave for her. By wiping out, I don't mean actively killing them. It's more of a slow death, by totally ignoring fluffies, by forcing them to rot on the shelf to death, so that their fluffy genes are removed from the gene pool due to their extinction. We men have the financial power to do this, because nearly all men are FIPs, financially independent persons. So we don't need women to be able to survive financially. We don't have to parasite off a woman in order to survive. Nearly all men are FIPs. We are socialized to be FIPs and evolved to be FIPs, that is, to go out into the world and understand it, manipulate it, hunt in it for our own survival. But women had to give birth to babies with ever larger heads due to the intelligence explosion and hence brain size of human babies. This meant that the woman's birth canal had to be wider for the baby's large head to pass through. Women evolved to give birth to premature babies, whose head continued to grow after the birth, so women became more dependent on men for their survival. Women could not hunt like men, leaving the home for days at a time, running after game to hunt them down, because women had premature and hence useless babies to look after, who required constant attention. Thus, women became ever more dependent upon men to feed them, to give them scarce male-hunted meat. Women evolved to manipulate men by bribing men with sex in exchange for male-hunted meat. Thus women evolved to be prostitutes to men. On a meat-for-cunt basis, women evolved to manipulate men, to sexploit them. Nature also conspired against men to make it easier for women to manipulate men. When men see their regular female sexual partner, the frontal lobes of their brains switch off. The frontal lobes are responsible for long-term planning and critical analysis. With the man's frontal lobes switched off, a woman can manipulate a man more easily because his higher brain functions have been switched off. He then becomes like a child that she can mould like putty to get him to be a better meat provider, a better resources provider, to keep her and her babies alive. Women evolved to judge a man according to the level of sexploitability he had. Those men who may have had other qualities but low sexploitability were and are considered worthless by women. Women do not love men. They love men's sexploitability. If a man loses his sexploitability by a woman, the woman will coldly, disloyally dump him in favour of a more sexploitable male. In the distant past, her very survival depended on how quickly and how easily she could do this. Men who believe that women can love them are deluded. This is the infamous red pill message to men from the MGTOWs. Thus, for several million years, men have been manipulated by women to serve as meat providers, as meat slaves to women, sexploited by women to keep the next generation alive. Nature too has conspired against men to keep them enslavable to women. But the male invention of the contraceptive pill changed everything just a few decades ago. Now women can reliably control the number of kids that they want, which is typically 0, 1 or 2. Since women live into their 80s on average, this means that women have some 40 years of career window. So that if a woman does not bother to get a career competent education so that she's unable to earn a decent salary, either she will be poor, living off her own income, or she will try to parasite off some manslave and have him pay for her superior lifestyle that she could not earn for herself. The masculists are men's livers. Masculists are very moralistic, putting enormous moral pressure on women to FIP up, that is, become FIPs, financially independent persons, or are punished by men by not getting one. Masculists see fluffies as vermin, as immoral, manslaving parasites to be spat at. A woman who does not bother to exert herself, as does a man, to earn a decent living, and simply expects to be able to parasite off a man's labour, off a man's money, is seen as criminal by masculists. Fluffies are the enemy of the masculists, which is why we aim to wipe them out by forcing them to rot on the shelf. Since women are herd animals, following the crowd, and a lot less individualistic than men, masculists have a powerful means to manipulate women into becoming FIPs by creating a social norm that women are to be FIPs or be socially ostracised, something that women in the distant past were terrified of, because in the distant past, if a woman was manless and cast out of her group, her tribe, she usually did not survive. So social rejection to women is usually death to them, and hence terrifying. We men have the power to force women to FIP up, because a fluffy can only be a fluffy if she can get her financial claws into some manslave. But thanks to the masculists and MGTOW movements, the supply of such manslaves is drying up, as men are influenced by masculists and MGTOW ideas and reject being manslaved by a detestable, immoral fluffy. The masculists are very conscious that by FIPPing women, that is, socially engineering society, so that all women are socialised by their parents and taught by their teachers as girls to FIP up, then they will, and hence not need to parasite off men's money. They can earn their own because they have some 40 years of career time in their lives. Masculists are very conscious that the fipping of women is a vital prerequisite for the freeing of men from manslavery, so that men are not socialized to be manslaves for women, so that men can be free from that role and live for themselves. The world is already way overcrowded, with a world population of 7 billion, so we can afford to knock back the world population to about 500 million over the next few generations, so men can be babyless for a few generations. The fipping of women will solve nearly all of men's gender problems. For example, the massive injustice committed in the divorce courts today in Western countries. For example, custody of the children going to the mother in 90% of cases, the ex-husband losing his house, half his possessions, paying child support to his kids he will barely see, and often paying alimony to his fluffy ex-wife so that she can parasite off him after the divorce the way she did before the divorce. This massive injustice is so criminal, so immoral, that it enrages masculists. So it's not surprising that there are probably hundreds of divorce court judge and lawyer murders a year in the US. But these judges and lawyers deliberately keep these statistics removed from the public so as not to encourage more murderously angry divorced fathers from adding to them. With nearly all women as FIPs, these daily financial massacres occurring in the Western divorce courts would not be necessary, because all women would be FIPs, hence custody would be joint by default. There would be no alimony, the owner of the house would get to keep it, there would be no transfer of possessions. With all women as FIPs, the worst example of discrimination against men, that is, the lack of a paternity rejection right, would be removed, so that men are given the same legal right as that women have to reject an unwanted pregnancy. Women have the maternity rejection right, but men have no para, so millions of criminal women lie to their boyfriends that they are taking the pill, get pregnant, then force the man to pay for the child that he does not want. This is criminality and immorality on a vast scale and has to be stopped. So it's vital for the masculists that girls are socialized to be FIPs, so that masculists use a carrot and stick approach to encourage/force women to FIP up. Masculists will only have relationships with women who are FIPs and punish fluffies by totally ignoring them, not even pumping and dumping them. Until the gender laws are made men fair, masculists will continue to refuse to marry and have kids. Masculists will have TWATWF, that's 2A, 2F, equals 2 apartments, 2 FIPs, relationships with women, that is, have live-apart relationships with a FIP woman, but no kids, no marriage. The great advantage of a TWATWF relationship with a woman for a man is that he gets the regular sex he wants from a woman, but no kids, no marriage. And when the relationship dies, he simply walks away, cost-free to him. TWATWFing also forces the women to remain nice to him. No nagging, no withholding sex, no trying to control or manipulate him. Otherwise, he walks away so easily. Masculists will not even TWATWF with fluffies. Fluffies are spat on by masculists as hated manslavers and are punished by being totally ignored, being treated as persona non grata, left rotting on the shelf to extinction, thus forcing women to FIP up or die out. With all women FIPs, the para will be so much more easily legislated, because a woman who decides to continue a pregnancy that her boyfriend rejects legally can afford to, because she's a FIP. She has the income to raise a child on her own. The fact that men have no para shows clearly how men are treated as subhuman cash machines by women, ignoring men's rights, putting priority onto women and children. This attitude enrages masculists, so it's not surprising that masculism is now causing millions of men around the world to have their masculist consciousness raised, so that men are getting very angry and going on the warpath against fluffies and fluffy feminist hypocrites, aiming to wipe them out. Masculists are political and work as social engineers. Masculists contact the media to educate the millions, the billions, the masses to become conscious of masculist and MGTOW ideas so that both sexes understand the horrors of the traditional male role that the masculists utterly reject. Masculists see clearly that the fipping of women is a vital prerequisite for the liberation of men from manslavery, from being seen as subhuman cash machines to pay for women to have babies. We masculists reject that role. We spit on it. We aim to wipe it out. We are wiping it out, because we men have the power to wipe out fluffies. If men decide that there will be no more fluffies, then fluffies die out. We men have the power to do that. Bullet. Women need to become female masculists to vote with men to men-fair the gender laws. Women are both men's enemies and men's allies. The fluffy feminists are hypocrites in the sense that they want equal rights with men, and I have no problem with that, so you could call me a second wave, in brackets, male feminist. But third wave feminism I see as genocracy, that is, rule by women at men's expense, making third wave feminists the enemy of the masculists, who label them feminazis, expressing masculist contempt and hatred for what they are doing in the divorce courts and their implacable resistance against the passage of the para. Fluffy feminists are hypocrites because on the one hand they want equal rights with men, but on the other they reject equal obligations with men. That is, these fluffy feminists resist the masculist push for women to bother to share the burden of earning the living by bothering to get a career-competent education, so that women can be real fips as adults and not expect to parasite off the money of a man. Fluffy feminist hypocrites are spat at by masculists, treated worse than fluffies, because at least the fluffies are not hypocrites, whereas fluffy feminists are fluffies, which is bad enough, but also hypocritical in terms of their rejection of accepting equal obligations with men concerning earning the living. Fluffy feminist hypocrites are feminists on equal rights, but fluffies in the divorce courts, and rejecting the para. So the masculists have two main enemies, the fluffies and the fluffy feminist feminazi bitches. Third wave feminism is genocracy, ruled by women, at men's expense, and is hated by the masculists who fight against it. The masculists have a major problem in their fight to get gender equality for men, and that is that women are 51% of the voters, and that more women vote than men. So since most women want to keep their privileges in the divorce courts, men will not be able to get the divorce laws men-fared with their own efforts. Women like their divorce court privileges, getting custody of the kids, getting half the possessions of her ex-husband, getting his house, getting alimony, often for life. These fluffy hypocrite vermin want to keep such privileges so that masculists are forced to seek allies with women. The strategy used by the masculists is to convert women into female masculists by two main ways, by the carrot and the stick. The carrot is to simply present the masculist case to women, so that reasonable, humane women will sympathise with the masculists and become female masculists, and hence vote with men to men-fair the gender laws, that is, men-fair the divorce courts. Fluffy women will not do this because it is not in their self-interest, but fit women would be a lot more likely to do so. The stick method is to scare women into becoming female masculists through threatening women with babylessness and manlessness, MGTOW style, that is, men who refuse to marry, refuse to have kids, and spend their money on themselves. Those women who don't vote with men to men-fair the gender laws, for example in the divorce courts, bringing in the para and a string of other legal and social discriminations against men, will be punished by men by not getting one. They will rot on the shelf. This is not an idle threat, because already 2/3 of young men under 35 in many major countries already are MGTOW in practice, if not in philosophy. Young women are really starting to panic as they learn that they are really not going to have a baby because quality men refuse to give them their sperm. This is forcing women to choose between giving up their divorce court privileges or not having a baby. Since having a baby is top priority to most women, women will choose to have babies and pay the price of giving up their divorce court privileges and voting for the para, etc. To get women to become female masculists, the masculists have a lot of work to do in teaching society, particularly women, that women will have to choose. That is, to men-fair the gender laws or be babyless and see the population decline, even be wiped out. Bullet. The feminazis need to be smashed so that they shut up. Masculists are utterly fed up with the feminazi bitches. The hatred against them is so strong that young women nowadays are conscious of this, so don't dare state publicly that they are feminists, through fear that that would be the kiss of death for them, of their chances of ever getting a man. No man wants a relationship with a misandrist, man-dumping, feminazi bitch. Such women are the first category of female to be rejected by men, left rotting on the shelf like the fluffies, but even more spat at, because the hatred coming from men is even greater, because men are fed up with the child-minded attitudes of the feminazis, that all women's problems are caused by men, and never any acceptance of the idea that women themselves are largely responsible for their own problems, for example, their inferior abilities, their lack of ambition, drive, etc. It was the feminazis, the fluffy feminist hypocrites, who created the toxicity of the divorce courts for men. So of course masculists have a hatred for feminazis. When masculists are confronted by feminazis, they give these feminazi bitches a real earful, haranguing them with male force and hatred. This is easy for masculists to do, because men are smarter and a lot more verbally aggressive than women, due to men's much higher testosterone levels. Masculists have a real hatred of feminazis, seeing feminism, that is third wave feminism, that is third wave genocracy, as a cancer to be exterminated. So masculists harangue feminazi bitches, giving a very clear message to women in general, that if they are stupid enough to be feminazis, they will pay a heavy price, that they will not get a man and will rot on the shelf and be spat at by men. This will shut the feminazis up. They will learn that they are hated by both sexes, because not only do the men hate them, but increasingly so too do women, because women are waking up to the idea that they're going to be babyless, because the MGTOW are rejecting paternity due to the toxicity of the divorce courts as created by the feminazi, fluffy feminist hypocrites. With both sexes hating the feminazis, they will die out. They will shut up. Women need to get real on their Women need to get real on their inferiorities and delusional arrogance. Too many young women today have the attitudes of princesses, feeling that they are the superior sex, being able to manipulate men to do whatever these princesses want. Those masculists, who are also scientists like myself, despise the is-scienate attitudes of these princesses, which motivates these masculists to teach these princesses a lesson. That is, the realities of female genetic inferiorities. For example, women are dumber on average than men by 4 IQ points. Women have a 10% lower IQ variance than men. So the morons and the genii are males. So men win 99% of the science Nobel Prizes. Men have much higher testosterone levels than women, so are a lot more aggressive, more ambitious, dogged, single-minded, and complete difficult tasks far more readily than women, who are more wishy-washy and give up more easily when the task is very demanding and difficult. So men's performance record is far superior to women's, so it's no surprise that in all cultures, boy babies are more valued than girl babies, because all cultures know from long experience that boy babies are much more likely to grow up to be highly valued members of their cultures than girl babies, who will grow up to be only baby factories and childminders, a vital role but not status-worthy, because any woman can do that. Masculist scientists slam such feminazi arrogance and cut it down, ridiculing such women for their is-scienate fairydom. In brackets, is-scienate equals ignorant of science, unable to reason scientifically. Fairydom equals living in a fairyland, believing what you want to believe without evidence, like religionists. Masculists are very verbally aggressive with these princesses, smashing them with harsh ridicule to stamp it out of them. These princesses are not tolerated because they regularly come out with their assigned fairy, PC, feminazi bullshit that the masculists piss on. Bullet. Women need to learn to be nice again to men or be ignored by men. Women need to be taught by masculists that women who are not nice to men don't get one. So many men are now going MGTOW that competition between women for the few available men who are still gullible enough and ignorant enough to marry and have kids will be fierce, so that any woman who takes a misandrous attitude towards men will be punished by not getting one, being forced to rot on the shelf. If she's a real feminazi, she won't even be pumped and dumped. She'll be totally ignored. Bullet. Women will have to compete with the artworms and sex bots. If the contraceptive pill was a major social revolution, just wait for the arrival of in the next decade or so, of the artworm, that's artificial womb, and the sex bots, that's sex robots. When men can grow their own kids and prefer to sex their bots than women, then women will be forced into deep existential shock and depression. These sex bots will have luscious curves, film star faces, creamy, grippy vaginas that women will not be able to compete with. They will be given AI conversational abilities and be programmed to be very nice to men, not nagging, not withholding sex, not manipulating men at all. Men will flock to them in droves, creating one of the world's biggest industries, thus making it impossible for the feminazis to ban. Japanese scientists have already grown a goat in an artworm, so human babies can't be far off. Once men have the sex bots and artworms, feminism will disappear overnight, and women will be clawing at each other, fighting for men's dwindling attention. Men will just ignore women in large numbers because women have severe negative qualities. Women nag, women withhold sex, women lie, women cheat and abuse men. Women's personalities are not nice. Women are sexploiters of men. Women are not loyal to men, being hypergamous, that is always on the lookout for a more sexploitable, richer, more handsome, higher status male, so that she will readily, coldly, disloyally dump her current man in favour of the better one if an opportunity realistically arises. The sex bots will not be given these negative qualities that women have, so men will flock to them and have relationships with them, forcing women to be much nicer to men or be ignored. Bullet. Women need to grow up, toughen up. The traditional fluffy role of the woman was to be paid for by a man, treated as childlike by men, because she was financially dependent on men. Masculists force women to be FIPs so that women will have to compete with men in the workforce and not be given special snowflake privileges because they are women. That the fluffy feminist hypocrites want. The masculists will force women to toughen up and compete equally with men or be spat at. Parents and teachers will need to socialise young girls to toughen up, become FIPs, and take the knocks and tribulations of life as readily as men do, and are taught to do.